Well, good evening. I'm Rick Dancer, and welcome to Get Real with Rick Dancer. And I'm really excited because it's kind of like going back to 2008 when I was running for Secretary of State, and I had to brush up on all my information on what was going on. And redistricting was one of the things I got tons and tons of questions on. And so today I went on and I looked up some stuff, and I said, yes, I still remember what I'm doing. So you guys, this sounds so dry to a lot of people. But if you see some of the things going on in Oregon right now, this is probably one of the single biggest, to me, this is one of the single biggest things that we need to take care of. We need to, when every 10 years, when they do the census, you have to go in and the legislature redraws the boundaries, the lines that tell you who represents you. And in the past, it's my show. I'm going to say there has been a bit of gerrymandering. What gerrymandering is when you make it fairer for one side than you do for another party. And therefore, I would call that cheating. And therefore, what happens is things get out of balance. Well, what we need in Oregon is more balance. And part of the reason I would say that we are out of balance is because of how this has been done in the past. So what a group of people is doing, and actually, a lot of them are legislators. They're saying, get it out of our hands, get this out of the hands of politicians and develop a commission independent commission that can determine where those lines are and where they should be drawn. And we're going to explain that to you. I'm bringing in some legislators. Also the co-chair of the Independent Party of Oregon. And just so everyone knows that I'm being fair, yes, even Democrats are on board with this as well. We don't have someone here tonight, but we tried and we couldn't get anybody. So we have, I'm going to bring everybody on. So Shelley, I'm just going to let you guys introduce yourself. How's that? Shelley, why don't we start with you? Tell them who you are.
Perfect. Thank you, Rick. Shelley Bossart Davis. I am the House representative, the state representative from House District 15, which is Albany, Tangent, and Millersburg, and the acres of farmland surrounding it. Very happy to be here tonight. Thank you, Rick.
And Christine?
Yeah, I am also equally thrilled to be here tonight. I'm Christine Drazen. I am the House Republican leader, and I'm also state representative for District 39. And for those that don't know their legislative districts, which is basically no one, I serve rural Clackamas County, between sort of Canby up to Highway 212 all the way over to Estacada, and then a small little sliver of Marion County. And so we could talk about gerrymandering a little bit with my little district to bring in a small portion of Marion County unnecessarily and cross boundaries there. But this is such a critical issue. I'm thrilled to have the opportunity to talk about it a little bit more tonight. So thanks for having me, Rick.
Oh, you guys are welcome. And Drew, talk about yourself a little bit there.
Well, thanks, Rick, and thanks for the opportunity to be here with you and Representative Bossart Davis and Leader Drazen. My name is Drew Kaza, and I am co-chair of the Independent Party of Oregon. Little plug for us: we're the biggest third party of any third party in the U.S. I think we're up to about 130,000 members now, and of course, we're all about good government, and that's why this redistricting process is such a critical issue for us. So, yeah, delighted to be here. Thank you for the opportunity, Ray.
Drew, I'd love to have you back sometime and talk about my even more favorite topic is opening up the primary in Oregon.
That's a good one, too. Yeah.
I'm a stinker when it comes to that one. I just can't let it go. It's like a booger on my finger. It's like, oh, my gosh, this is so important to what we're doing here. You guys, I am so happy to have you because I think people that understand this understand how important this is, especially this year. So talk to me about this commission and kind of where we're at with that. Anybody can just pipe in.
Well, I'll jump on that one, Rick. I think that you started off by saying this is such a dry topic. And I think to a lot of people, they don't realize how valuable or how important this topic is. But really, the legislators that people elect, they need to fairly represent the communities that they serve. If they don't, then it's something that really concerns every single person. You brought it up in your opening about the district that you live in, and if you don't feel like you're fairly represented, that you're lumped in with a group of other people that maybe don't have the same common interests, then that's a big deal. And so politicians, if they're charged with drawing these lines, they have a absolute conflict of interest because they can choose to draw whatever lines that they want to keep them elected. And so that's the problem. It's a conflict of interest. And instead, people should choose their voters, or people should be able to choose who represents them. And so that's why we're calling for an independent, nonpartisan commission, and thrilled to be able to talk about it tonight.
So even like, I'm going to take my district just for a second. So let me read something to you guys. I looked it up, and the criteria for redistricting is, I mean, there's a whole bunch of them, but all these would fit in the situation that I'm talking about, my district here, except for one, it says not to divide, excuse me, communities of common interest. And so I looked up the map for my district, and I live in Camp Creek, which is out in the country, in Marcola, and some of the McKenzie Valley. These are farm people, they're loggers. And then there's people like me. But we are connected with the University of Oregon and South Eugene. And while I have friends in South Eugene, I have friends who teach at South Eugene or at the University of Oregon, we probably don't have that common interest and the same political beliefs. And even recently, I think one of our legislators who covers this area, one of our senators, actually brought that up about my district. Isn't that true in a public hearing?
Yeah, it actually is true. It was the representative from the district that you're speaking to, and talked about how that particular district did not keep communities of common interest together. So it was very simple. You can look at the map, but it's not so much the lines that the map's drawn. Obviously, a lot of these districts look funny, but it's actually the voters in that district that matter.
So, Christine, Representative Drazen, talk to me about your concern, like where you live in Portland area, how there's the maps are drawn so that they end up getting big districts into these spiked wheels where all of a sudden you've got rural areas connected to urban areas, and they think differently. These are different representation.
Yeah, so in my area in particular, at this moment, I am the last Republican member of the House with my district wholly in the Tri-County area. That makes you believe that there are no more Republicans left in Clackamas, Multnomah, or Washington counties. Those three counties are represented in the House, at least, by Democrats. All of them. If you live in those communities, you are represented by a Democrat right now. And so when you only achieve that through gerrymandering of districts by pulling people into deep Portland-centric parts of our state. And so, so for my district in particular, my district does nice traditional things like follows school district boundaries, and then it does less traditional things, and it jumps a highway here and it jumps a highway there, and it jogs up really high and grabs a couple of neighborhoods here and there. And what they've done for my district is that they have taken all these other districts and made them deep Democrat districts, and then they left one final Republican district in all of the Tri-County area. And I'm not complaining, I'm a Republican, but the truth of the matter is, for all those other districts out there, how they drew those lines, connecting Sandy all the way into portions of Multnomah County, those are not necessarily communities of common interest. And so as we're trying to balance out these population centers, one of the flags for us has to be, are we creating districts where the legislator, in fact, can accurately and fully represent the interests of those communities that we're drawing those lines around? And you can take a look at the numbers inside the legislature, and you can see that that can't possibly be true. We have the Independent Party of Oregon here with us today. Non-affiliated voters in the Independent Party of Oregon in some of our districts are a substantial number of our voters. And somehow we've drawn these lines so that Republicans and Democrats in particular, you weight it heavily to the Democrat side of the aisle, and you end up, no matter what the numbers look like for Republican or non-affiliated voters, you end up having a Democrat representation. So
and you guys
should do better.
You have Democrats on your commission calling for this committee, calling for the same thing. We just couldn't get anybody on tonight, but you do have Democrats that are saying we got to get this commission set up to get this thing out of the hands of the political. It's just it has to be done.
Well, we have single party control in our state, which means that Oregon is so much more likely to be gerrymandered than other states, with a more balanced political kind of dynamic going into this process.
So, Drew, talk to me from the Independent Party of Oregon. What's your concerns?
Yeah, well, what I wanted to mention to you was, this actually has a huge amount of public support, and were it not for COVID, it's very likely we would have this independent commission in place already, because there's a group of us, a group called People Not Politicians, and folks can go look at that website, People Not Politicians Oregon, that were working on getting this ballot measure together last year when COVID struck. And it ended up being a court case, unfortunately, I think adjudicated somewhat partisanly by the Attorney General of Oregon, who ended up appealing the case to the U.S. Supreme Court. And the effect of that was the signatures that we had were stopped short of making it to the ballot for November. However, during the course of gathering these signatures, we did polling, Rick, and close to 70% of Oregonians agree that this is a good idea. So we were quite confident if it got on the ballot in November, it would have passed and we would be doing independent redistricting now. So I think the legislature needs to pay attention to what the people believe about this process. And the people are not stupid. They can see that having the foxes guard the hen house is inherently problematic for democracy. Okay. From the independent party's perspective, just to touch on your point about primaries, I think one of the keys that we see today in the way we're governing is that because we have these gerrymandered districts that are safe districts either for Democrats or Republicans, it drives the parties to their extremes. And I'm happy to say, I think, notable exception of our two guests today, but there are extremes with both sides of the parties now in Oregon, because that's what happens when you have a primary-driven process. Instead of having any competitive general elections, there's nobody fighting over the middle anymore.
Right.
I think we need to see that again to get back to the Oregon we knew in the 70s and 80s when consensus was being formed. We had liberal Republicans, we had conservative Democrats. They came together and did things back in those days, and now it's one-party rule, as Christine said. Can't agree with her more on that.
Yeah, a couple of really great senators in Oregon history, Senator Mark Hatfield and Senator Wayne Morse. Wayne Morse, as a Democrat, supported Hatfield because they both disagreed with the Vietnam War when it was unpopular to disagree. 70% of Oregonians were supportive of the war, and those two guys did that, and they would never have survived today. Hatfield said that in an interview that I had with him. They would never have survived today because we've allowed Oregon to become this. And I see this gerrymandering as a key to Oregonians standing up and saying, okay, we don't know what's causing this, but this is an area we can do something about, and we can get this out of the hands of them. I think this is a super smart move on your guys' part. And so talk to me, because right now, and for people, because I didn't explain this, every 10 years you have to do this. You redraw the line. So you wait for the census to come out, and then you see what areas have grown, and then you can redraw those lines if they need to be redrawn. What concerns me is I'm also reading some things where our current Secretary of State is pushing the process ahead, saying, well, let's get Portland State to do this populist study, and we'll get this thing pushed through and get this done. And that concerns me because shouldn't we do the census and then kind of let this process go and try to set up this commission to do it fairly? I don't understand what the hurry is.
Hurry's power.
Yeah, it's power. Exactly. Representative Drazen said, yeah, it's absolutely power. But going back to the conflict of interest that you spoke about. So it's a conflict of interest for politicians to do this, but I wanted to mention some numbers because I think that resonates with people. And we talk about this being a one-party rule in a very blue state, but I would like to just do a few percentages and a few statistics to say it's much more purple than people think. So right now in the House of Representatives and the Senate, Democrats make up about 61% of the legislative body. Okay. But in 2018, in the governor race, the governor won with only 50.1% of the vote. Okay. And then as recently as 2016, a Republican won a statewide office with 47% of the vote for Secretary of State. So you can just look at some of those numbers to say, if you look at the statewide races, they're very close to 50%. And then you look at the legislative and how that's made up, and you're looking at 61% of the legislative body. And it leaves it open to the possibility of gerrymandering more than any other time. In fact, Axios just reported just a few days ago that it ranked Oregon as a high risk for election maps being rigged for partisan gain. And we're the only state on the West Coast that's not at a minimal or the lowest risk rating. I'll point out that both Washington and California have processes for independent nonpartisan commissions.
What, seriously? Really?
Yes.
So both Washington and California already do this?
Yes. And Idaho. There's 26 states in the nation that already do this.
So why? This is unbelievable. So we still, I mean, no offense, I know you're both legislators, and so I'm going to pick on you. You're both politicians, but I don't trust anybody to draw my lines for me if it's going to be like, you know what I mean? I wouldn't want that responsibility. I wouldn't want that to look like that. Because that
just means you're a common sense Oregonian. I mean, what you're saying is what everybody should say. Mm-hmm. Everybody in Oregon right now should say, we don't want our politicians drawing these lines, that we would rather entrust this to an independent, nonpartisan commission. So what you're saying is absolutely true. The challenge for us is going to be, because they weren't able to get onto the ballot because of COVID, we're in this process where we're saying, let's do the right thing right now. This should be a bipartisan bill moving forward. The leadership on the Democrat side of the aisle should embrace this opportunity to restore trust in our elections. For those folks that might feel faltering right now, we're in kind of some tough spot right now as far as, people's trust in our ability to govern well together. Let's clean the slate. Let's go with a nonpartisan independent commission. Let's do it together. But
so what would that take to do that? So in terms of
it would take political pressure, my friends.
So this House bill has to go through this session.
Traditional process, yes.
And if that doesn't happen, then what are we left with?
A mess. Because at this point, although the Secretary of State is angling to do one thing, the Constitution says something else. It's important to note we're not going to meet any of the constitutional deadlines that Oregon has set out. The census has already mucked that up. So from our perspective, I think speaking for all of us, this gives us an outstanding opportunity right now, Rick. COVID has actually given us an opportunity to do the right thing and make sure that it's not basically hijacked by a partisan Secretary of State or handed off in some fashion to the courts down the road, which is supposed to be the last backstop under the existing process. The legislature is going to be asking for these numbers way late anyway. So we still have time to get it right between now and the end of the year. I think if we act soon, if we act on Leader Drazen's bill in the House, there are hearings going on across Oregon for people to let their voices be known. I think we can talk about that as we go along. So as some of the people on can take part in that weekend. And we can let the legislators know that this is the process that we need to go through, rather than the mess that we're going to have on our hands if we don't take this step. It's really unclear who's going to set these lines if we don't put the independent commission in place.
So what's the House bill? People are asking me. What's the number?
It's HJR 7. Leader Drazen, it's her bill, and she's fantastic in lining out kind of what that process looks like. I'll give that to her, but I will say that I have reached out to just in the last few days to many of these organizations across the spectrum, from the Independent Party to League of Women Voters to Common Cause to Oregon Farm Bureau. I mean, it's a slice of Oregon, reaching out to them and say, what would you like to see in an independent nonpartisan commission? We're able to amend that HJR 7, and Christine explained that and kind of what the process would look like in that timeline, because like Drew just said, we have the opportunity because of COVID. Not often can we say that, but we have the opportunity to do the right thing that COVID has actually granted us.
And one thing before you talk about that, because I was reading online, and it looks like the Secretary of State is really I want people to understand, is pushing this through, trying to get Portland State to do a population study, which that's not the census, right?
No.
So I'm going to say this, is to go around the census process, have Portland State do this, which is not the way it's done. And then so we can get it pushed through by July 15th or June 15th or something like that. And so for some reason, there seems to be a hurry on her part. And if you as Oregonians feel like that, you're in a hurry for this to happen and you want to circumvent the process, I guess then that's the message. But I want you to know that's kind of what's going on behind the scenes. And so we're trying to get your support I am. To get this out of the hands of the politicians, and yes, the Secretary of State is also a politician. So
three words for you here, and I'm going to allow the ladies to be diplomatic about it. I won't be so diplomatic. 3 words: naked power grab. That's what's going on.
Explain your 3 naked words there.
Well, it's pretty clear. She's in a vacuum. Things will flow, and there is a vacuum of sorts right now because of the issue we talked about with the Constitution. So she's trying to go around that. As you say, she is a partisan player, fairly new to her job, of course, as most of us know. I think there are some people that would be very happy if she could just take the reins of this thing and go and do as she pleases with it. So that's what you see going on, but it's clearly not in the interest of a vast majority of Oregonians. So I think people should be upset. People should know about this and be upset.
So Tanya wants to know who pays for the independent redistricting. You can read that. Yeah, Christine, can you answer?
Yeah, I'll jump in there. So like any other piece of legislation, this will go through our legislative process. So right now, this bill is in rules. So the chair of the Rules Committee is my counterpart, the majority leader. Barbara Smith Warner is her name. She is a representative from Portland, and she has not agreed to have a public hearing on this bill. Rules gets to operate all session long, so at any moment she can change her mind. We can apply public pressure and get this bill moving. It would go from rules down into our Ways and Means process, where we would do an analysis of what it would cost to operate this redistricting commission. Now, we can also get information. As we mentioned, 26 other states have these commissions. So we will have a good sense of what the cost would be. In most cases, if our commissions are appointed and they are volunteers, the cost of operating them from that basis, you don't pay your commissioners to do this work. They're volunteers, they get per diem, they get their mileage reimbursed, and then you have staffing costs. So the bulk of the cost for this, in fact, would be staff to be able to provide staff support for the independent commission. And so the part of it,
I'm sorry, who picks them?
And so the general fund would cover the cost of the redistricting commission. It would be a part of our balanced budget. The state's required to have a balanced budget every cycle. It would be a part of that process.
And who picks the commission members?
Oh, thank you. So right now the measure is actually fashioned after people, not politicians. And so Drew can run through some of the details if you'd like to on that one.
Yeah.
Drew, so we even took this process out of the hands of the politicians. I like that.
Yeah. As the measure was planned, you'd have administrative law judges that would be in a position to put together this commission, and the original plan for that was to have 4 members that would be Republican, 4 Democrat, and 4 nonpartisan or third-party members of the commission. Obviously, it is all subject to change with the bill that's in place, and again, public input on this could influence it one direction or another. But that's the way it was originally envisioned. That you'd have basically independent administrative law judges that would pour through what would be, we assume, hundreds of people that want to serve in this capacity. So the sooner we get on that, the better. But one of the keys is that people would have to declare interest. You couldn't have anybody that's been a lobbyist or has been in office or that sort of thing as members of this commission.
So could like a washed up Secretary of State candidate who lost be on that? I mean, if this dude named Dancer wanted to throw his name in there, I mean, would he get, and do I have a chance, a shot?
We're gonna have to inspect your Twitter feed first, sir. But I wouldn't really.
Well, never mind. I'm done. That's over. I can't do it. It's gone. So Tanya wants to know, what's the time frame for the process?
So as it relates to the portion that's legislative, we have a couple of options here. The resolution would need to go to the people for a vote. And if we can get that moved through the process, that would occur. It could come before Oregonians as soon as September. So we have the opportunity to put it in front of them in September. And in the meantime, we could pass a complementary piece of legislation, which would take kind of the guts of the proposal and begin the process of the appointments. And then it would all be effective and operational upon passage. And so if people vote yes, and this is what they want to see, and we believe very strongly that they would, we would actually be up and ready to go at that point.
Representative Boshart, tell me, you were saying there were some other kind of famous Democrats who've come out, and we were talking prior to the broadcast that states need to have independent commissions, even people such as.
Yeah, well, we're at high risk of gerrymandering, right? And so we're in good company. It's bipartisan support. And I know the names but we're looking at former President Barack Obama, Eric Holder, Senator Raphael Warnock. Ronald Reagan is quoted as wanting to put forth not just legislation, but this idea of not gerrymandering and having a process to not have a gerrymandered process, that ultimately voters should choose their politicians, not the other way around. So again, this is across the spectrum. This is what the people want. And to Drew's point, when he quoted some numbers as far as what Oregonians want, it's very simple. The only people that don't want this are the ones that are in power. The politicians in power are the only ones that wanted this. I will mention that late Dennis Richardson, when he was Secretary of State, he saw this. He knew that as Secretary of State, this possibly could fall to him. And he didn't want the responsibility. As a Republican, he didn't want the responsibility of that. And so he put forth a task force of everybody, multiple Republicans, Democrats, the Progressive Party, the Libertarian Party, the League of Women Voters, the Independent Party. I mean, the list goes on. And they came back with a proposal to the legislature and said, you need to do an independent, nonpartisan commission. And so he said this back in 2017. He foresaw this happening. And that particular piece of legislation also didn't get a hearing. And it was the same people in power. It's very obvious. We know this is what's happening. The court of public opinion is going to have to win this battle for us to have fair lines drawn this year.
Hey, Rick, if I can, I just want to add to what Representative Bossart Davis is saying, bringing it home for a second. As far as the Democrats are concerned, there's a couple names folks in Washington County in particular will recognize. Former Rep Jeff Barker endorses this. Of course, he just retired a couple of years ago. And somebody going back to the golden era you and I were referring to earlier, former Representative Congressman Les Aucoin also is a proponent of having an independent commission for redistricting.
He's a fellow boxer from Pacific University.
There you go. There you go. You guys have the best eyesight.
That or physical therapy. Peggy Rush says, how successful could Fagan's lawsuit be? Explain. We didn't talk about that, but Peggy's obviously in the know.
Representative Drazen could speak probably to the lawsuit itself a little bit, but I will say that we are in I hate saying the word unprecedented because I swear it's overused this year, but that's what we're living in. This is not something that the Constitution could have foresaw. And so I don't know if I can speak to whether it will be successful or not. The courts have currently right now a heavy responsibility to say, we know that we're not going to get the census data. We're not going to be able to fulfill the requirements of the Oregon Constitution. So now what? And so that's something that we can't answer or we don't know. And so, which again, puts me back to the need for this. Again, it's an opportunity that we have never had before. It makes sense. It makes sense for Oregonians and they want it. Let's do it.
So Tanya Fagan, no relation, she says, by the way. I thought the Constitution mandated redistricting by a certain date or it defaults to the Secretary of State. And but the Supreme Court may be pushing that, allowing because of COVID. Explain how that process works so people understand where we're at with that.
Normal year, 10 years ago, we would have received the census data in February. And so 10 years ago, when they drew the lines, they received that census data in February. And then by the Constitution, they had until July 1st to draw those lines. If the legislature fails to do so, then that responsibility falls to, per the Constitution, the Secretary of State by August 15th. What's crazy about this year is we're not going to receive the census data until after both of those dates. That's why we're in this, unprecedented situation that the Constitution didn't foresee. And so those are the dates that I think that are important. Census data doesn't come until after both the legislature requirement and the Secretary of State's requirement, which is why we're talking tonight.
Right. So if you can't get that census data, how are you going to get this information? And getting Portland State to do it is not constitutional. That's not the way it's set up.
Well, and that doesn't serve Oregonians. That's the thing, is we need to, if we're going to have good lines that serve communities of common interest, if we're going to have fair lines drawn, we need to have the real data. And there is absolutely no basis for Oregon to suddenly decide that PSU data is good enough for Oregonians. It's not. And we should do everything that we can to be ready with a nonpartisan, independent commission to allow them to step in once that data is available and hit the ground running and get these lines drawn right away. The lawsuit that's out there right now, it's interesting. If you talk to the governor et al., and I occasionally have that opportunity, she is fond of recognizing that she has appointed more judges than any governor in Oregon's history. And she has personally appointed more than 50% of the Supreme Court. So I don't know how the lawsuit's going to turn out. I saw a question pop up saying, how's that lawsuit going to work out? I really have no idea, but I don't necessarily think that that's a court that's been in place for super long. They certainly haven't. It's unlikely that they've seen any other redistricting cases in front of them if more than half of them have been appointed during the governor's tenure.
So what do people do now? So now I've got my audience out here. They've heard this. So what do they do to get involved? And I mean, this is about populist pressure. Now the population has to put pressure on the legislature and the governor and the Secretary of State to that this is what we want. If you don't want this, then you put the pressure on that you don't want this. But if you want this and you see this as something you want, this is the time I won't use my mom's saying, but get off the pot. I mean, you have to do something at this point, right?
Fish or cut bait. That works in your part of the state. Fish or cut bait.
I'm on the McKinsey.
What we do now will affect the next 10 years of voting here in this state. Mm-hmm. It's really, truly that important. I think overall, I talk about being aware of what's going on, making sure that you have a relationship, that you know who your representative and who your senator are. It goes to that being aware of what's going on around you, but specifically contact your legislator. Let them know that you support an independent, nonpartisan commission. I'm hoping that there are 500,000 people that are going to watch this, Rick. I'm counting on you. And so I want 500,000 emails to go to their legislator. And if you're one of those people that say, I am embarrassed and I don't know who my legislator is, literally you can Google, find my legislator, Oregon, and you go to a screen and you put in your address and it will tell you who it is. And so, and then the contact is right there, and you send an email and I will receive that email and I will be able to say, holy cow, I just got 2,000 emails that say, I want this. I'm going to send them all to the chair of the Rules Committee that Representative Drazen pointed out is Representative Barbara Smith Warner, who has that ability to hear HJR 7, and let's have a conversation and let's talk about the pros and cons. That's what we do here in Oregon, and that's what a democracy does. So contact your legislator, find your legislator, send an email, tell them that you support an independent, nonpartisan commission.
Nancy, thanks for being brave to ask that question, because a lot of people don't know and they're not going to ask and be brave like you are. There's a House of Representatives in Oregon, a state House of Representatives, and there's also the state Senate. So you have a senator and you also have House of Representatives representation. But this also includes congressional seats, not Senate, national congressional seats. So there's 5 of them in Oregon. And these redrawing of these lines affect those as well, not the Senate, but because we have 2 senators from Oregon, but in the House of Representatives nationally, we have 5. So this affects how that's done as well. And a lot of people, we were talking earlier on the coast, a lot of the representation from the coast is also connected to the Valley. I know people who live on the coast, and they think completely differently than the people that think in the Valley. So you folks need to understand that you have little grabs that are going into, there's a district on the coast that goes all the way to your district, right? All the way up near Mount Hood, the same district as that.
Yeah.
that's a big stretch of people. So you guys, you need to be aware. So what I did today is just go on, you can look up Oregon legislature and look up the district maps, and then you can zoom in on it. And that's what I did. And my jaw dropped when I saw University of Oregon and Camp Creek and Marcola in the same place. You need to look at those and see who you're connected to, because you probably don't even know, but guess what? I didn't either. So don't be ashamed. Educate yourself and then get involved in this process. I want to ask each of you one more thing, and you can throw your own comment in here too. But it's kind of a weird little thing I'm going to do. But what is your hope? What is your hope? Not just about this, but for Oregon. What is your hope for Oregon?
Wow. Okay. Well, I'll jump in there. And so for me, like I just said, this affects the next 10 years. So my hope for Oregon is balance. I spoke on the House floor literally today about a bill that has nothing to do with this, but it was about a bill that took away legislative oversight to the Department of Energy. So why would we do that? I am for a checks and balances of systems. I am for balance in general. And I think that that's what it boils down to. There's a checks and balances for a reason. And if we can get closer to balance, a balance of ideas, a balance of listening to all voices across Oregon, that's my hope. That's my goal. Having somebody else, not politicians, draw the lines will get us closer to that goal.
Go ahead. Anybody, either one of you, go for it.
Leader Drazen, or should I go? You want to?
You should go. You should go. Then I can.
Right. I'll let you take the cleanup spot here. Well, my hope for Oregon, I've had a slogan in my head for years that I would run on if I ever ran for office again, Rick. And I hope somebody runs on it and then delivers it. And it is 4 words: we are one Oregon. Yeah. And I'd like us to get back to that. The divisions in this state are just so unfortunate, and they're self-inflicted. And this process is part of that. And so that's why at the Independent Party of Oregon, we're interested in good government, whether it's redistricting, whether it's campaign finance reform, whether it's tighter ethics laws, whether it's more transparency in government. All those things I think are important to get us to where Oregonians can have trust in their government again, and we can forge consensus easier. But I did want to touch on your congressional point for a second. Two things to say about that. One is I don't think people should be flooding their congressional office about this issue. It's not going to be settled in D.C. It's going to be settled in Salem or in the courts. So don't bother the congressional office. But we are going to get more than likely a 6th congressional seat, which makes this all the more pressing that we get this right for the next 10 years. And to your point about representation on the coast, trivia question for you. When was the last time we had a congressman from the Oregon coast? Do you know?
I don't.
Almost 50 years. So the last one was Wendell Wyatt from Astoria, and he was beaten by a young man named Les LaCoin. So it all comes around again.
So I'm gonna I guess wrap up that question. I'm gonna start by saying, very specifically, if folks are looking for who to contact in addition to their legislators, the chair of the House Rules Committee is the one who's making the decision today not to schedule this bill. So her email address is rep.barbarasmithwarner@oregonlegislature.gov. So it's uncomplicated. Reach out to her directly and ask for this bill to be heard. And we can get public input on what changes would be recommended and how we could move forward with this. And as far as my hope for Oregon, it's an incredible opportunity and privilege to serve in this building. I every single day, I'm amazed at the fact that I get to come here and I get to stand in the gap for people, and I get to be a voice for those who don't have power, might be extraordinarily busy in their lives, might not always know some of the finer details of the legislation that's in front of us. And we get to do our absolute best to cast our votes to serve our state and to serve our people. And my hope for our people and this state is that we will begin to remember that our work here has to help. We're not here to advance a partisan agenda. We're not here for personal pet projects. We're not here to pound our chests and beat the desk and just vote no for no good reason. We're also not here to vote yes, because somebody expects us to. We're here to weigh in the balance what best serves and helps people. And the more that we can remember that, regardless of party, the more that we can begin to look across the aisle and we can see fellow Oregonians and not just simply see Republican, Democrat, Independent. Instead, we will see people in common cause that care about helping each other and finding a way to do that through political means, do it in your local community, through local service organizations, but to just remember that what we need right now more than anything else is to look out for the other guy and to do our best to help people.
So, you know, what's funny is, Peggy, I have to call you out. I've got the number. We have, Andrew, you are awesome. I was just thinking in my head, I'm going to call Andrew and have him put that on the screen in the comments, but you're very efficient. Sarah Duncan is right. But Peggy, one of my viewers, she says this, here's what, because you said to write them. She says, I'll be nice. Because I always tell people, do not write nasty letters. Right. Nobody reads them. So you get on there and go, listen, damn it, I want you to, and nobody's going to read it. So get on and be nice. So now Peggy, I got you trained. I mean, you're actually repeating my comments about be kind, be nice, and be firm, because you can be firm and be kind. So you need to be firm and let people know what they do, what you want done. Thank you, Representative Drazen, for responding to my emails, even though I'm not in your district. And Brian says, please do a show on precinct committee persons. It's very important regardless of party. But Brian, I got to warn you, if I do that story, I'm also going to do the story on why am I as a taxpayer paying for your precinct elections? And so it goes both ways. I don't think I should be paying for your precinct party business when I don't get to participate, and that's taxation without representation. But that's another show. Anyway. You guys, thank you so much. This was way more fun than I even anticipated. You make me so tempted to want to run for something, but I'm going to back away from you so fast. No, but thank you for being honest and talking with us. And again, you guys, this is not a partisan issue. This is our issue. This is Oregon, you know? So thank you very much. I'm going to close out here a little bit. You guys have all your staff share this on your pages to other representatives and stuff so they can push it out. So people, because we got friends in Rome, Oregon, we got friends in Jordan Valley, Harney County, all kinds of places. And they all need to hear this because there's the voiceless people of Oregon, the super voiceless, Burns, Oregon. Nobody's listening to that. So anyway, I thank you for what you do. Thanks, my man, at the Independent Party. I love what you guys are doing, and keep speaking out and doing our thing. And if you come up with something else you want me to do, just give me a call. That was a fun night. Thank you very much. Thank you. Appreciate it. No, you betcha. All right, you guys. So I want to thank John Highland Construction, because John called me up and said, Rick, I don't need any promotion, but I want to support what you're doing because I love that you're a voice for people, that you're doing this. So he pays for a show and he's not even looking for benefit from it. That's Oregon. So you guys, what did we learn here tonight? It's our state. It is our state, no matter what they tell us. We are Oregon. I'm a native. I was born here. But you know what? If you moved here, even from California, and you chose Oregon as your home, you too are an Oregonian. But what we have to do in this state is start working together. We have to stop yelling, and we have to stop going, well, he's a Democrat, he's a Republican, she's an independent, they're a progressive party, they're the family party of Oregon. We are all one state. And so we need to start acting like that and working together and stop yelling. But we also, God, you guys, we cannot have a supermajority. I don't want a supermajority of Republicans. I don't want a supermajority of independents. I don't want a supermajority of Democrats. And that's what we have right now. And so we have no power because we've given that away. So if you're apathetic, get off the boat. We can't have apathy anymore. We've done this for too long, and now it's time for people to get involved. So you saw the number from Barbara. Just write a quick little note that just says, I want this heard. I want my voice heard. I want this bill heard. And that's all you have to write, and share that with your friends on your email. You can bitch and moan and yell and write things on Facebook and Instagram and all kinds. It doesn't do anything. This is your power. So we're giving you an opportunity to use your power. So go use your power. All right. I'm Rick Dancer. This is Get Real with Rick Dancer. Tomorrow night, we're hoping to have Donna Ream, the lone survivor from the Dairy Mart murders 27 years ago. She survived. She's a friend. She is not feeling well today, so we're hoping to get her on. If she doesn't come on, we'll do something else. We'll find something for you, but I'm hoping that she will make it. It'll be a profound night. And again, John Highland Construction, thank you so much for trusting me and just supporting us because you like what we do. That's what we're looking for. All right. Share this on your page also, because Facebook's really rude and they just kind of, as if they hear something they don't think they like, then they don't put it out there. So take this and share it on your page and we can kick their butt too. It's all about getting in the game.